Hello and welcome to yet another session of In Dialogue Foundation's Certificate Course in Dialogue Studies 2024-2025. Today we have the pleasure of having Dr. Hilal Ahmed, who would be speaking on what to do when dialogue is seen as a problem. Dr. Hilal Ahmed is Associate Professor at the Center of Study of Developing Societies, CSDS. He works on political Islam, Indian democracy, and politics of symbols in South Asia. He is associated with the Lokniti program of the CSDS. In the past, he has taught a course, Political Sociology, at the Victoria University, Wellington, New Zealand, and worked as a lecturer of political science at University of Delhi. Dr. Ahmed did his PhD from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London, and is Associate Editor, South Asian Studies, as well as for the Journal of British Association of South Asian Studies. Dr. Ahmed is a renowned author and is currently working on a book project on the politics of Muslim political representation in post-colonial India. He has produced two documentaries, the latest being Qutub, Ek Adhura Afsana, meaning Qutub, an unfinished story, and a film, Beacons of Hope, documents Dr. Ahmed's life story. Dr. Ahmed, you have up to 2 hours for the session. You may leave as much time for question discussions as you like. Sir, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Pragya, and thank you for having me. And I also again make this request: kindly switch on your cameras, because my camera is not going to be off. So I would like to have this, not the question answer session. I would like to have this as an interaction kind of a session where we can actually talk about something which is very central to what I think and I work on. One thing which I would like to make it clear, that I'm a political scientist by training and I work on Indian politics. So whatever I'm going to present is primarily based on my location as a political scientist and the area of work on which I do research. And honestly, I have not yet done any systematic study of dialogue or dialogue studies. But because in politics, dialogue or dialogic studies play a very significant role. So how do we think of a possibility in context of Indian politics? And what is the role of a dialogue in Indian politics? So what I'm going to do basically to talk about the problematic which I have highlighted in my title. Suppose dialogue is seen as a problem, because usually we think that dialogue is seen as a possibility to open up another possibility to resolve conflict. So therefore, think of a situation where one party is actually eager to initiate the dialogue, while the other party thinks that this dialogue is actually a weakness of the first party. Now, if that is the case, then what would be the solution? Because that would be eventually lead to that would actually lead to a possibility where there would be no dialogue. Is it what we are going to talk about, or is it something which we in that situation, the initiator, what would be their role, his or her role in that context? So this is the problematic, and I would like to talk about bit more specifically about Gandhian way to resolve that context in which one party is almost indifferent towards the possibility of dialogue. So this is the background in which I have situated my lecture. 2 hours would be too long for me because I am not in India. I am at the moment in Pennsylvania. So this is the morning time, and my impression was that it would be almost 1 hour or something. So I would be rather brief, and I would encourage all of you to ask a question, and we will have some kind of a discussion. I'm assuming that all of you would be able to would be able to understand Hindi, and I'm assuming that how many of you cannot understand Hindi at all? How many of you cannot understand Hindi at all?
We actually, Dr. Ahmed, we have a couple of students who are not from India. They haven't joined yet, but in case they
Hmm.
join, plus we also put this up on YouTube. So, so primarily we would prefer if you use English, but of course you can
No,
use a
no,
little bit.
I will be speaking in English entirely.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
But
But
I
if
have
you
to show
consider,
you, yeah, but I have to show a video clip, and that clip
yes,
is
yes,
in Hindi. So I will translate that, and then
sure.
because that's the beginning of my lecture. Okay, so this is actually a film which is called Lage Raho Munna Bhai, which is a famous Hindi movie, which was based primarily on or reimagining Gandhi in our own context. There is a person who thinks that he can see Gandhi, and following this his imagination, he started a satyagraha. And exactly the same problem arises when the other party is not interested to talk, or the other party is almost indifferent towards the question of dialogue. Okay, so I'll play that clip first, and then I'll raise a few questions. So let me just share my screen with you. Yeah, so I'm going to play this clip, and after that, I'll raise a few questions. No, let me just basically tell the story. Yeah, so you can watch this later whenever it is available to you, and I'm assuming that most of you must have seen that. There is a situation in which uh, a group of people started what they call satyagraha, and they invite the person who has taken their house, who is a builder in Mumbai, and they wanted to have a dialogue with him to so that to avoid all the possibilities of violence. But this builder is actually reluctant to accept this demand. So instead of talking to them, he refused, and he asked the guard, the security guard, to look after these so-called satyagrahi. So the guard actually goes there, and he then hit the hero of the film, and then because this person, the main protagonist, is basically a criminal, so it would be entirely unexpected for him to be slapped by a security guard. But he said because he's following Gandhi, he won't react. And he said that Gandhi has said that if someone would slap you on your right, you offer your left cheek, so that it will create some kind of a possibility of love in his heart. So following that Gandhian suggestion, he offered himself again, but the guard did not stop. He slapped him again on the left cheek. So after that, he said, Babu didn't tell me what to do if you are, if both the chicks are slapped. So what to do in that situation? And this is a very crucial situation. And then he actually, he punched the security guard again, and he said that now I'm fine. Now this is a situation where, and I think that here the question which I have raised in the beginning, that what to do in a situation where the other party is completely the other party is not interested at all in creating a possibility of a dialogue. So there are two questions which I would like to raise here. One, is it the right interpretation of Gandhian technique? Two, if that is the case, then if that is the case, then Gandhi is actually a weak person, or the Gandhian possibility of creating dialogue is a weak strategy to resolve a conflict in the political context. So this is what I am going to talk about. Now I will also now share my own screen again, and we will briefly talk about the idea of satyagraha through Gandhi, and try to make sense of this possibility of dialogue when try to think of the possibility when the other party is completely uninterested in talking to someone who would like to create dialogue, because usually we think that dialogue is a very sweet thing, that the moment you say dialogue everybody would come and talk to you. This is not the case. And in politics, dialogues are basically not merely to reduce the main conflict, but also to create a conducive environment when some kind of discussion can be happened. Remember that dialogue has got its own politics. So therefore, we have to be very clear. But before I talk about Gandhian way, I think there are four things which we have to remember, and these four things are crucial with regard to the first question: if the other party is not interested in dialogue. The first and the far most important aspect of dialogue is that there could be one or uh, two or more parties in a given situation. And in that given situation, one party would be called the initiator. So this party would initiate a dialogue. Remember that dialogue are always initiated by someone. So that's one precondition which we have to understand in a context of politics. One, that one party would be the initiator. This would be the party who would initiate the dialogue. Now, the second aspect of the dialogue is the subject matter. As I said, that there could be one central problematic issue, but there are other subsidiary issues related to the central issue. So we have to recognize that the fact that whenever the dialogue starts in the context of politics, the subsidiary issues are the actually would become the talking point, not the primary conflicting issue. So that's the second thing which we have to remember. First is there would be two or more parties, and one party would take the initiative to become the initiator of dialogue. Second is that there would be the main core subject matter, and there would be other related subsidiary questions which would become the talking point so as to reach to the main conflicting issue. Third thing is the institutional setting. Is there any institution which is actually inviting two or more parties for a dialogue, or there is no institution or there is no institutional framework available to have any kind of conversation? So it could be a possibility that dialogue would be outside the realm of the formal institution. That is also important, because suppose there was a famous discussion when Ram Temple Babri Masjid issue was alive. Indian state in 1991 and later in 2019 invited both the parties to come and to come meet and resolve the issue outside the court. This happened at least 5 or 6 times. So in that context, state as an institution provided a platform where different political actor can come and talk to each other. So that all, if that is the case, then the institutional logic must be kept in mind for dialogue. So three things: one party would be the initiator, other party would be the respondent. Two, the subject matter meaning the core conflicting question, and there would be other subsidiary, less important, less relevant issues related to the main conflicting question. Third is institutional framing, that if the dialogue is happening inside an institution or not. So we have to also important. And finally, that's the fourth aspect of a dialogue possibility in the context of Indian politics, especially, and that is the outcome. What is the objective of dialogue? Are these dialogue happen primarily to resolve the conflict, or the purpose of dialogue is to create or buy time or create a possibility where further set of conversation can happen, or it is the objective is to reduce the tension, or the objective is to actually contribute further to the tension and the conflict. And it goes both the ways. In many cases, dialogue actually contribute to the conflict very significantly. So these are the four crucial aspects of dialogue in politics. So we have to remember that. And then the second question, which we just saw: suppose the initiator is enthusiastic, and initiator would like to have some kind of a conversation, but the other party is not interested. And in fact, the other party would say that you are initiating the talk because you are weak and you do not have capacity to fight with me. In the recent, and there are number of examples where the peace, the people who would initiate the peace dialogues are always seen as weak people. Remember that, the candle march, which we usually saw on, key locations in our main cities throughout the world, and these people were seen as if that they are the most weak people because they do not know how to fight, and that's why they are unable to do anything except, taking out procession with candles. Would Gandhi accept this? This is my question. There is a saying in Hindi which is called "Majburi ka naam Mahatma Gandhi," meaning that everything that is weak and unable to find any solution is Mahatma Gandhi. Is it the case? And by the way, I am not a Gandhian. I would like to read Gandhi with these questions and try to make sense of what is called Satyagraha. So, this is the purpose. This is the second question which I would like to talk about today. So, I'm going to share a few slides with you, and then I'll stop and we'll talk about these things. Yeah. So, how to make sense of Gandhi and Satyagraha? Is it something that is relevant to the question, the first question, if the second party is uninterested, useful? So I will like to, unpack this idea of Satyagraha through Gandhi. But when we say Gandhi, I think we have to be very clear about something, and that is Gandhian inconsistency. So it is easy to use or say this the way in which this particular film was made. The person was interested in Gandhi and he wanted to reinvent Gandhi, etc. But I think that he actually failed to understand one thing, that is the way Gandhi would like us to read himself. So therefore, Gandhi in one of his essays that was published in 1933 said very categorically that I always celebrate my inconsistencies. So you find that there are number of inconsistencies in Gandhi's writing. He's saying something at one point of time, and on other point of time he would be making a very different set of argument. But he said something here in this article that was published in Harijan in 1933, and he said, I quote, I would like to say to the reader, meaning his reader, that I am not at all concerned with appealing to be consistent. Therefore, when anybody finds any inconsistency between any two writings of mine, do well to choose the latter of the two on the same subject, unquote. What does it mean? He says that actually my position would continue to change. And because this changing position, I would say that you have to understand my here and now. Instead, you just recognize that there is a consistency in my thinking. So we have to be very clear that the Gandhi of 1915 is not the Gandhi of 1947. And that's the reason why it is very important to read Gandhi, because the film in the quote which is used in that context was that of, I think, 1920s, when Gandhi read Bible and he made that point that if someone slapped you on your right cheek, you offer the second, the left one. I think that is 1920s. But would Gandhi agree to that idea later? So I don't know, but I'm just flagging this question. So first thing, whenever we read Gandhi, we have to be very clear that he would always like to be read as a person who would always change his position. And while changing his position, he also said something very important. He said, my writing should be cremated with my body. What I have done will endure, not what I have said and written. This is also important because for Gandhi, the political action is important, not the treatise or the doctrine or the doctrinal argument he was making. it is a very important question to remember that Gandhi was a man of political action. So, therefore, first thing is that we have to read Gandhi as a person of full of he is celebrating, but it does not mean that there is no sort of a foundational logic in Gandhi's writing. There is a lot of emphasis on goodness, and that's why the meaning of satyagraha must be understood with regard to goodness for all, or the social justice argument, which is inextricably, you know, linked to Gandhian arguments throughout his life. And the second thing is the politics of politics of action. He is making this point that he is more interested in political action, not making any sort of a doctrinal claim. So, so what is the argument? How should we read Satyagraha of Gandhi? So, reading Gandhi, I would suggest three things. Reading Gandhi the way he would like to be read. Reading Gandhi through praxis, meaning recognizing his writing as an action or the practice, because whatever practices he did in his life, he wrote about that. So, because Gandhi is no longer with us, what we know is that he would always like to write the experiences which he had at that point of time after involving in political action of some kind. So that's the praxis would be the right word to understand Gandhian Satyagraha. The third thing about Gandhi is reading Gandhi as a reader, disregarding his suggestion, not to trace consistency, but to trace a coherence in consistency. And this is my way of reading Satyagraha. I do not want to follow what Gandhi said. Rather, I would like to come out with a coherence in his inconsistencies. And if that is the case, then I would like to read Satyagraha in a historical sense. Remember that Satyagraha, first he used the term passive resistance to describe Satyagraha, and that was in 1928. There is a book that was published in 1928, but the idea of Satyagraha evolved when he was in South Africa. Now, this is an important point with regard to the first question. So, again, we have to keep remembering the question which I have asked. I just remind you these two questions. First is that what to do in a situation where the other party does not want to get involved in dialogue. And the second question is that is it the right way? Is the dialogue of a question the weapon of the weak? Dialogue meaning that we are weak and that's why we are indulged in dialogue. So these are the two central themes around which we are going to discuss the idea of Satyagraha. So this is the history of Satyagraha, which I don't think that is relevant for our discussion today. So this is the meaning which Gandhi himself wrote in that famous book that is called Satyagraha in South Africa. He said, and I quote, "Truth implies love and firmness. Agraha, truth means satya, that implies love and firmness, engender and therefore serve as a synonym for force. I thus began to call the Indian movement in South Africa Satyagraha, that is to say, the force which is born of truth and love or non-violence, and gave up the use of the phrase passive resistance." So remember that there is a difference between passive resistance and Satyagraha. So what is Satyagraha and what is not a Satyagraha? This slide makes it clear. So we have to remember that Satyagraha is not a strategic move taken by a political group to achieve a larger objective. Meaning that we have to be very clear that if you say that we are involved in Satyagraha, it should not be treated as a strategic move. In this film, it was basically a strategic move to get the larger objective done. Second, Gandhi is also making this point in this book, which is called Satyagraha in South Africa, that passive resistance or a weapon of the weak is not Satyagraha. Third is Satyagraha is not at all brute force. And finally, Satyagraha cannot be and should not be treated as an irreligious entity. So, what is Satyagraha then? Gandhi said, an individual quest for exploring internal truth. So, if you are involved in Satyagraha, you have to understand that you are doing it for yourself, not for the other. Second, Satyagraha is not the weapon of the weak. Instead, it is a weapon of the strongest and exclude the use of violence in any shape or form. So instead of saying that those who initiate dialogue are weak, rather, Satyagraha is actually a technique which would make you strong and even strongest. Third, Satyagraha does not believe in brute force, instead, the soul force or love force. And finally, a belief in truth, and truth is God. So, this is what Gandhi said, that you have to spiritualize Satyagraha, and this is actually an individual quest. So, if you say that I am involved in Satyagraha, it simply means that you are doing it for yourself, and when you do that, you would feel, Gandhi says, that you would feel that you are very powerful, because you are talking to someone who is not at all interested in talking to you. And that's the precise reason why he said that the soul force or love force, not merely love for yourself, but the love for the person who is your opponent, is very important. And only then you will realize that you would be able to perform Satyagraha. And finally, he said, when he said that Satyagraha is religious, his meaning of religion must be understood. He said that it is a belief in truth, and truth is God. So I'll come to this part later, but let us just look at, what if this is Satyagraha, then what are the features of Satyagraha? And can these features resolve the questions, both the questions which we have highlighted in this talk? First, as I said, it is an integral or internal quest. Gandhi, in the same book, said, the very nature of Satyagraha is such that the fruit of the movement is contained in the movement itself. Satyagraha is based on self help, self sacrifice, and faith in God. As I said, that it is an internal quest. You are doing it for the sake of yourself. You are not doing it for the larger humanity or the larger part of the movement. Rather, you are doing it for yourself, and that's why the movement itself is your goal. If you are indulged in a dialogue, that dialogue itself is an outcome which you must realize, because that is actually helping you to reform or to remove evil from yourself. These are important questions, because if you are in a situation, I would like to make it clear that if you are in a situation of a dialogue, you realize that if in everyday conversation, if you have some kind of a conflict in with a family member or so, after some time, if you go and say sorry, you feel some kind of, if you go and say or apologize and say sorry, you feel relieved. And this is what Gandhi was expanding the scope of this feeling in such a way that it would acquire a larger political meaning. So that's first feature of Satyagraha. It is an integral quest. So these people who were actually doing in the film Satyagraha in front of the house, they were using it as a strategy. Gandhi would say, no, it's not a strategy. It should not be a strategy. You are doing it because you feel that it would remove evil from you. Second, it is a universal approach. Gandhi says in another article that published in Young India, 27 February 1930, and I'll quote, it is an important quote: Satyagraha, to be genuine, may be offered against one's parent, against one's wife or one's children, against ruler, against fellow citizen, even against the whole world. Such a universal force necessarily makes no distinction between kinsman and stranger, young and old, men and women, friend and foe. Love does not burn others, it burns itself. Therefore, a satyagrahi will joyfully suffer even unto death. So, it is a universally applicable technique, but it will become meaningful if we see it as an integral quest. So, that's the second feature of satyagraha. The third feature, which I have highlighted in this slide, is this one: love force and the opponent. Now, this is very important. A satyagrahi must never forget the distinction between evil and the evildoer. He must not harbor ill will or bitterness against the latter. He may not even employ needlessly offensive language against the evil person, however unrelieved his evil might be. For it should be an article of faith with every satyagrahi that there is none so alien in the world but can be converted by love. Now, this is an important point, that you have to recognize that the other party, which is actually your opponent, is doing a wrong thing, and that wrong act is important, not the party. And because you are making a distinction between the person who performed the negative act and the person himself or herself, I think it is very important to distinguish these two. So Satyagrahi must believe that if he or she would be doing Satyagraha, he or she must have faith, then it is possible to convert that person. Now, that belief is very important because it would eventually lead us to the first thing. I am doing it for my own sake. I am involved in dialogue because I think that this is right. And because this is right, it is universally applicable. And that's the reason why my opponent one day will definitely change. Because I do not wait that my opponent will change today or tomorrow. I am doing it for my own sake. Now, this is called commitment building in politics. So if you are committed for some cause, you are making that commitment for yourself, not for changing the world or changing your opponent. So that's also very crucial and important. Now, what are the conditions for satyagraha? Now, this is the last thing which I would like to talk about, and then I will invite your questions. What are the conditions? First condition: satyagraha in the last instance. Gandhi said satyagraha is never adopted abruptly until all other and milder method have been tried. So remember that satyagraha is one of the techniques Gandhi used. There are other techniques as well, but satyagraha is the last resort. So therefore, you have to try, and in a situation where you have to initiate a dialogue, you have especially in the realm of politics, you realize that satyagraha is the last thing you have to go to. Second is self-realization. A person, Gandhi says, who claims to be a satyagrahi always tries by close and prayerful self introspection and self analysis to find out whether he is himself completely free from the taint of anger, ill will, and such other human infirmities, whether he is not himself capable of those very evils against which he is out to lead a crusade. It is very important point, because here Gandhi is trying to make this argument that if we are saying that there is an evil in that person, first of all, we have to remove that evil from ourselves, and only we would be able to convince the other one. So if we, there is a possibility that if we believe that, that person has got that thing which is negative, but that thing is negative, and I think he's right, he's doing strategically fine, and if you admire that negative attitude of that person or a party, then you won't be able to convince him or her completely. So therefore, this is a question of self realization. Self realization is a condition, an important condition for initiating a satyagraha, in our case dialogue. Yeah. Now, social purpose. In another article, Gandhi says Satyagrahi cannot be resorted to for personal gain, but only for the good of others. A Satyagrahi should always be ready to undergo suffering and pecuniary loss. Remember that it should be for some purpose that is not your individual purpose. It should be a social purpose. So, collective thinking and collective objective are important for Satyagrahi, because only then you would be able to create a condition of a dialogue that you would say that this is not merely about myself, this is about a number of other people as well. Then again, a very important point, a public opinion. A satyagrahi must first mobilize public opinion against the evil which he is out to eradicate by means of wide and intensive agitation. When public opinion is sufficiently roused against a social abuse, even the tallest will not dare to practice or openly to lend support to it. An awakened and intelligent public opinion is the most potent weapon of a satyagrahi. This is very important because most of the time we find that those who call themselves satyagrahi won't be able to create a public opinion in their favor. So most of the why candlelight marches are insignificant, has become insignificant in our public life, because the public opinion has not yet been mobilized or has yet been created in order to realize that the objective of that very act is actually negative for the entire society. Now, finally, social boycott. When a person supports a social evil in total disregard or anonymous public opinion, it indicates a clear justification for social ostracism or boycott. But the object of social ostracism should never be to do injury to the person against whom it is disregarded. That's a last feature of satyagraha. So this is, if that is the case, then I'll let me just stop here. And in Gandhian context, it is important that I am doing for my own sake, and if the other party is not interested, it does not mean that we give up the possibility of dialogue. But for that, we have to realize that if the other party is wrong, what is right for both of us. So I stop here, and if you have questions, I would be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed. Whoever has questions or comments can just raise their hands and I can take them one by one. I think one thing that I sort of Jazz raised his hand, but I'll just mention. I think I am now going through these rules and wondering about all the latest protests, etc., that sort of happened, and which of those actually fit under Satyagraha. So that's giving me food for thought. Jay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Uh, so, sir, I had a little doubt in this case where when we talk about satyagraha as not a strategic sort of move, right? It's not it's not politically motivated or it's not strategic. It's not a strategic move. But wasn't the Indian independence movement led by Gandhi exactly that? Where in the satyagraha in the context of Indian independence, like precisely a strategic move. So how does that sort of contradiction or something operate in this case then?
It's a very good question, and it is. I think we have to first of all understand what is the meaning of strategy, because Gandhi won't deny the term strategy at all. But strategy for what? What is the purpose of that strategy? So Gandhi, if you ask this question to Gandhi, he would say yes, it is, satyagraha is also a strategy, but it is a strategy for the larger good. And I am adopting this strategy to remove evil out of my own body. So in that sense, I'm not doing for the sake of the country. There is a famous interview of Gandhi. That's the only and probably the first recorded interview of Gandhi that is available on YouTube. It was conducted by an American journalist. He went to see Gandhi and he asked a number of questions. And it is recorded, it is available on YouTube. So I would encourage all of you to please watch that interview. So this person asked a few questions about alcoholism, about other things, and finally asked a question: would you prefer to die for India's independence? And throughout the conversation, Gandhi is doing his charkha. He is not, he's not looking at the person directly. He is doing his charkha. And then when this person asked this question, okay, would you prefer to give your life for the independence of the country? What would you expect? What would be the answer of Gandhi? Usually, what our leaders would say, yes, I am going to die. No. Gandhi stop and say for a while and say, it's a stupid question. Why it's a stupid question? Because Gandhi, in Gandhian way, he would say that I'm doing for my own sake. Jinnah kept saying to Gandhi time and again, I am the leader, I'm the Qaeda-e-Azam for Muslims. Why don't you accept this that you are the representative of Hindus in Shimla conference? And Gandhi said, no, I can't because I represent myself. I'm not a representative of of whole Hindu population or a Muslim population. I mean, I represent myself. So if you agree, I am doing it for my own sake. So strategy for the purpose of what? So Indian freedom movement was strategic, but if you compare Gandhi and say for others, you find a stark difference, and that may be the reason Gandhi was killed because he said that I'm happy to die. What's wrong in that? So I think we have to understand strategy is not a bad word, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, a follow up. If I have somebody else doesn't have anything to add, I just had a follow up on this. So when Gandhi is talking about, okay, I am leading this massive movement for myself, could you contextualize it a bit for me here? Like,
No, he didn't
how
say
does
that
that?
I'm.
No,
No,
but
he
like
didn't. Never
that's why
said.
what I'm paraphrasing. So that's what I need to understand. Where when if he's being interviewed and he's being asked that I am leading this, that he's essentially the de facto leader of this massive movement, and then he's being asked what is his motivation, and then he says that okay, satyagraha is for me, myself, and my own inner sort of purity. Uh, then how does that essentially? Okay, yeah. So basically that only where when he how can you just contextualize it a bit for me? That's what I wanted to ask essentially.
No, Gandhi never said that he is leading the movement. He never
But
assumed the
yeah,
idea of leadership. And that's why he was deeply interested in the idea of collective leadership. So, if you ask me, what would be Gandhian way of, envisaging leadership? He would say it's a collective leadership, and collective leadership and the critical leadership, the idea of inconsistency. So, for example, probably only for one or two times he went for election campaign. Remember that in 1936, Gandhi went for election campaign for Congress because 1935 Act allowed Congress to contest election, and Congress decided to contest election. By the way, Gandhi was not a member of Congress after 1936, but he went to campaign for Congress candidates in one of the constituencies in Firozpur. And he went there, and to my surprise, he said something which is, you don't find in election. What we usually do when we go and when we make electoral speeches in favor of someone, he would say that this person will change your life, etc. Surprisingly, Gandhi was not saying that. It's a very famous speech of Gandhi in which he said that in parliamentary democracy you have to have two sort of people. One, those who are elected representative, and second are the voters. So it is the responsibility of the voter to make control of these people who are actually contesting election. And he said that if you don't control these congressmen, they would be more hostile to you, and they would be more problematic to you than the British rulers. Now, this is the election speech Gandhi made. It means that the
mm,
idea of, and in 1947 again, when Zakir Hussain, who was a very close associate of Gandhi, asked Gandhi that shall we go and contest election, because Gandhi was not part of Congress. He said that there is no need for having a Congress as a body and it should be dissolved. But Nehru didn't do that. So Gandhi replied to Zakir Hussain, no, we need not to at the moment. But if some time comes, then we will do alternative politics of different kind, which is a collective politics of different sort. So Gandhian imagination of idea of leadership is very different.
okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else who wants to go have something, or we can just Dr. Ahmed, if you can maybe throw some light on the recent protests that India has seen, maybe the farmers' protests or Shaheen Bagh protests, or um, or for that matter, immediately after Gandhi. So Chipko movement does sound like something which was a Gandhian style of protest. It was for the social good, larger good, environment, etc. And but I don't know. I don't know if the recent ones were as would have fallen as into the bracket of satyagrah. So if you could just throw a bit of light on that.
There are two answers to that. One answer is that I met a person who claimed himself a Gandhian, and he said in a conference that most of the Gandhi's movements were failed. And factually, he's right. Factually, he's right. Look at non-corporation movement of 1921, civil disobedience movement from 1930, Quit India movement 1942. These were actually, they did not achieve what they intended to. Then the main two things which in constructive program Gandhi highlighted, one was Hindu-Muslim unity and then untouchability. These two things failed completely in last 76 years of independence. So can we say that Gandhi is a failed politician? Now this is an important question. Recently, I was watching a Netflix series. It's called Money Heist, which is a very famous. I think it is because I know only English, so that's why I was watching that in English. But I think it is not in English. It's originally in another language, in which the reference of Gandhi keep coming. I think 2 to 3 times. So whenever a bigger social goal is described, the people who are actually criminals, they said that we are doing it in a Gandhian. So is it a failure that after 76 years of his death, a popular commercial film made in Europe using his name in a positive way? One. Second is, if you ask this question to Gandhi, are you failed? He would say no, because I was not doing it to remove untouchability from or creating Hindu-Muslim unity for others. I was doing it for my own sake. So the movement which I led, I did not expect that this movement will achieve their stated objective. I was doing it for my own sake, and I achieved it. I purified myself. I'm not, practicing untouchability. This is what he said later. And he said that I am strongly a believer of Hindu-Muslim unity. So first part of the answer is this. The second part of the answer is that remember one thing, and I have written an article, I think last week in Times of India on 2nd of October, that there are basically three Gandhis. After the death of Gandhi, we found three different faces of Gandhi. One was a Sarkari Gandhi, or the official Gandhi, which is on our currency note, who is also treated as father of nation, etc. And every politician will go on 2nd of October to pay homage on his samadhi, etc. This is Sarkari Gandhi. Now, there is also a philosophical Gandhi. So people like us will read him and find him extraordinary philosopher, etc. But there is a political Gandhi. So the movements you talk about, like Chipko, or like Chhattisgarh Mukti Morcha, or like Narmada Bachao Andolan, for them, Gandhi comes as a fellow traveler. They find him as if that he is with them. And he is also struggling. Remember that, in his last days, he wanted to go to Pakistan. So, and why? He was, there is a conspiracy theory that he wanted to take some money to Pakistan, etc. It's all rubbish. He wanted to go there and then try to live there. So if he would have gone there, the whole idea of two nation theory would be broken. So we have to be very clear that political Gandhi still survives, and political Gandhi is actually is more relevant than the Sarkari or the philosophical Gandhi? There are some questions, so can you read them out for me?
Yeah, so I think one is a comment by Dr. Denny. He's mentioned that Gandhi has shown us a form of protest. I'm angry and sad by the pathetic response from the government with regard to the doctors' protest in West Bengal, and voices are getting suppressed and criminals are escaping. So it's you know.
Yeah, it's actually a common, because again, Gandhian politics, if you compare Gandhian politics with left politics in India, you find that the left politics also try to do bit of experiments, and these were very important experiment, how to make people committed. Remember that Gandhian politics, or say for instance left politics, is a difficult politics in Indian context. It is difficult politics because for a rightist Hindu or a rightist Muslim, it is very easy to mobilize him or her, saying that this is your religious duty. It is very easy. So if I'm a Hindu and I'm mobilized for something which is in the name of Hinduism, I would be happy to join, because it will give me, naturally I'm part and parcel of that. So in that context, it's easy. But Gandhian politics is a difficult politics. It is difficult politics because this politics would ask you to give up yourself and think of yourself in a larger big whole, that you are part and parcel of many other identities, which is a complex question. But Gandhian politics and Nehruvian politics was the most successful politics in India. Even now even now Gandhian politics survive. So it means that we need to understand Gandhi not merely in his context, but also in our own context. So therefore, the protest, by the way, I have also written rather extensively on protest politics. Now, protest politics has somehow lost its legitimacy over the years. Why? Precisely the problems which Gandhi identified, because the protest politics is now issue based. We see, for example, this doctors protest, something happened which is terrible thing to happen. But I think for a Gandhian, or for Gandhi would go deeper and find out the structural causes which led to that mindset, where a person is raped and killed. So what is the mindset? And then he would actually expand the scope of that argument and mobilize public opinion. Unfortunately, the failure of the protest politics is that we do not have sufficient public opinion in favor of the cause. And why? Because the cause is not fully expanded. That is one of the reasons why most of our protests are, could not generate wider social sympathy. For example, Shaheen Bagh. I have written quite extensively on Shaheen Bagh protest, etc. But what is important is, for a common person, common Hindu who is living in Delhi, should understand the pain and the argument made by those who are protesting against a particular law. The failure of that protest was that it actually could not convince or produce any sort of a legitimate response, or any sort of a legitimate logical conclusion which could be linked to their imagination of reality. Yeah, the other question.
Ranveer has a question. Ranveer, please go ahead.
Yeah,
It is
please.
not a question, rather, I would say, just to drag the conversation to some other direction. I was thinking, the question which I was about to pose, and then you mentioned about your article, which you just recently mentioned, about that is Sarkari Gandhi, philosophical Gandhi, and political Gandhi. So for me, Gandhi of early 20th century, he was a person who was having a very rich social and political capital. He was the one who was very resourceful. He was the one who was well read, well equipped with the knowledge and resources, and also produced something and got celebrated in the later years as compared to other people who never get those kind of opportunities. And I think when we are mentioning about this Sarkari form of Gandhi, if I see it in relation to the existence of state itself, state is a very powerful entity and it does not let survive any kind of entities which question the existence of state itself. And Gandhian philosophy is the one which is never contesting that idea of state itself. It is not never challenging that per se. And it is something which state was always considering that it's fine. Couple of people are coming together, doing satyagraha very peacefully, not a very threatful, violent atmosphere. And this is something which is curated by the state, this whole idea and philosophy celebrated by the state, even introducing it within our literature from the childhood itself. That is also just something as a intellectual state apparatus kind of thing. And this is something I think we need to understand it in relation to that how state is giving huge legitimacy to this one particular ideologue, which I'm not very well read about Gandhi, and I'm not even aware whether somebody explained it in its relation to the state itself. But if you just build a conversation in this direction, that how you say this, because I consider state is even promoting and facilitating all Gandhian thoughts and processes and all Gandhian frameworks in every possible sense, because it is never creating any kind of threat to the state. But
I think that there are two parts of your comment. It's not a question, it's actually a comment, and a very powerful comment. I think that there are two parts of it. One part is when you say Gandhi and state, the relationship between Gandhi and state in his own context. And second is the idea of Gandhi, which is appropriated by the state now, and because they feel that this Sarkari Gandhi or peaceful satyagraha is type of thing which is acceptable and it is not going to pose any challenge to the state. So these are two facet of the comment you make. For about the first comment, as I said in my presentation, that Gandhi was very much interested in inconsistencies. And when he started his movement in South Africa, it was not against the state at all. It was a very limited movement, and it was meant entirely for certain, freedoms. When he came to India later in 1915 or so, his thinking about the state continued to change, and especially Champaran. Now, Champaran is important, and he said that I would peacefully surrender myself for punishment of the state because I am the subject, not citizen. Remember that Gandhi and in all, for that matter, all Indians were subjects of British Empire. We were not citizens. So he said that I submit myself for punishment, but I think that you are wrong and your state is wrong. And he said, why? Because your state is not truthful. And that's why, in his context, he challenged the state. Not merely one time, I think 7 or 8 times in various court cases. And especially there is a book by a British judge, and which is a fascinating book to read. Gandhi was actually produced in his court, and he described his experiences of evaluating Gandhian response to something. And he said that I was clueless how to deal with this person, because he said that I am your subject and you have every right to punish me, and I accept all the charges without any argument. But I think that because I am morally, my argument is morally superior to your state, therefore I don't think that your state is justifiable state. And remember that you find very similar set of argument in Bhagat Singh's writing, which is surprising because Bhagat Singh was also making a very similar point in some of his essays which he wrote. And if you carefully look at the act of Bhagat Singh, the throwing of the bomb when it was not meant to kill anyone. He wanted to, arouse these feeling of nationalism, etc. And then there was a fast in the jail. So both of them, both Bhagat Singh and I find, and this is my reading of both of these figures, and I have a great respect for both of them. But now the second part of yours. The second part is that what is interesting is that Bhagat Singh and Gandhi, those who are actually challenging the very idea of the state in colonial times and even in post-colonial times. Remember that Gandhi was very uncomfortable with the kind of state that came into existence after the departure of the British. He was uncomfortable. He said that it is very centralized. There is no possibility to having a village sort of a republic which he envisaged. And in fact, he wrote a letter to Nehru about that when the Constituent Assembly was, they are making the constitution. So what is interesting, what happened to both of these? Gandhi and Bhagat Singh were appropriated by the state later, and they appropriated as national symbols. And these national symbols, even now, if you look at any political ideology of any, when I say political ideology, meaning that the political parties, they use both of them in order to give some kind of a legitimacy. But there is one important point which we must remember, and that's the third thing which I would like to add. First is that what they were doing, what Gandhi was doing in relation to state, because his argument was against the state. He was challenging the state, not merely the state, but the modern civilization. In Hind Swaraj, he said that I am not against the British state. I am against the idea, the very idea of civilization, the modern civilization, which has produced this kind of state. And he was appropriated, and he said that I'm not convinced the kind of state which we are going to make in India. So that's one thing. Now the second part of the third thing which I would like to add is that the constitution which came into existence in India, which is remarkable in two senses. First of all, the Constitution of India is an outcome of a political movement. And that's why the spirit of the constitution, the spirit of that movement is still surviving in the constitution. And this is precisely the reason why social movements in post 1970 India actually took Indian constitution very seriously. And perhaps India is the only country in the world where the constitution is used to challenge the state. Gandhian technique and Indian constitution. These are the two resources which are often used by the opponent of the state, which is very surprising. Look at Shaheen Bagh, look at farmers' protest. They were all having the copies of the constitution. Why? Because they realize that the constitution is actually an outcome. There are two things in the constitution. One is rules and regulations and articles, and second is the philosophy of the constitution. And because this philosophy is coming from national movement and the various facet of national movement, and that's why it has become a political resource of some kind. And then the Gandhian technique. Now these two things surviving, it means that the idea of state in India is challenged not to actually overthrow the state, but for a deeper democratization. This is not a simple, rhetoric. Deeper democratization. It is a very, very important point. Deeper democratization. All social movements are contributing significantly to make democracy a way of life, in which both Indian Constitution and Gandhi and even Bhagat Singh are, they have rediscovered in a completely new way.
Thank you. I'm just going to, ask everyone to speak up, the ones who especially don't speak. And if you have a comment, question is good. Otherwise, maybe you can just introduce yourself, even if you don't have anything. So I'll just start with Janvi. Janvi, you introduce yourself to Dr. Ahmed, and then we can have your comment or question.
Hello, sir. I'm Janvi. I'm currently studying I'm currently the student of law in Christ University. And my particular question was about, as we talked about Satyagraha, and the peace movement that Gandhi described basically, can it be applied to the current situation where cases like rape, which require a more violent approach to them? Like there have been a lot of the very recent case in Arjikar Hospital where there was a vandalization taking place. So can we say that only peace can solve it, or we need another approach for it?
First of all, the whole idea of, first of all, there are two parts of it. First part is the act, the very act, why that has happened, why rape happens in India. It means that we are not sensitive enough to that. So if you ask Gandhi, Gandhi would say, for me, the crime is not important. What mentality actually lead us to do that crime is crucial, and especially violence against women. So it means, but now I'll tell you something which is very important. For Gandhi, Gandhi would like to, there is a very interesting book, and I would strongly recommend all of you to have a look at it. It is called Manu's Diary, which is published very recently. And but Manu was actually Gandhi's granddaughter, not his son's daughter, but one of his nephew's daughter, Manu, and she was very close to Gandhi. So she wrote a book which is called Gandhi, My Mother, because for Gandhi, Gandhi would like to imagine himself as a woman most of the time, and that's why his whole brahmachari experiments, which are very very controversial, etc., happened. But what is important is that he would like to question the mentality that produced that very act. That's first thing. And can we, because this is not a, in my one of the books, I did one experiment which I call FAQ, frequently asked question, because we live in a society which is a very instant society. We would like to have ready to use question and ready to use answers. But Gandhi would always celebrate slowness. So your question is of that kind, because if the peace and punishment are two simplistic terms, obviously an act of crime would always be dealt with not peace but with punishment, so that that punishment would become a lesson for others not to get involved in that. But Gandhi would not be a person of quick instant justice. He would say that justice is actually a process of unfolding, and that unfolding requires some time, and that's the reason why his criticism of fast life or modern civilization, he said that slowness is very crucial, and if we adhere to slowness, then we have to just sit down and think what are the reasons which actually create that condition in which women's body became a target for attack. And if that is the case, then Satyagraha would not be to deal with the person who committed that crime, rather the environment in which anti-women feelings are surviving. So I think from Gandhian perspective, that could be the argument, that we have to think more broadly what has happened. Obviously at that, but there is another question. The question is, what would you do when someone would attack you? would you say, okay, please mujhe chhod do? No. In Gandhian technique, then if you kill that person who is attacking you, is ahimsa or non-violence. Because time and again, Gandhi would say that because in that case, your hinsa, your violence is justifiable. But in the last instance, remember, Gandhi killed a calf in ashram because he was in pain, and and then he wrote an article. He was in favor of mercy killing, because mercy killing will reduce the pain of suffering, and the purpose of non-violence is to stop suffering. So therefore Gandhi said that you have to protect yourself, and to that extent, and that's why, by the way, Gandhi is a great reader of Gita, Bhagavad Gita. And he wrote a very interesting explanation of Gita, in which the specific question you have just asked, is given a very detailed answer in case of Draupadi. And again, he is expanding the scope of the argument. What led these people to actually reach to a point where Draupadi was disregarded? Okay.
Thank you, Janvi. Vikas has okay.
Yeah, Janvi, you want to say something?
Sorry, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, sir. So, you said that Gandhian idea is about like having patience with the justice process. But then again, as we see in the contemporary world, if we like focus on the idea of having a patient form of justice, like the case takes up to like 15 years in the normal run. And even in a fast track court, it takes up to 6 years. And if we link that thought process, that the slower we take it, the more better chances of having a clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, the next question. Yeah.
So Jaya has raised her hand, but also Vikas has a question in the chat. So Vikas, if you can unmute yourself and ask, is that possible for you? You can just ask it, and maybe we can also take Jaya's question as well, and then you can.
Hello.
Yeah.
This is Vikas, and I'm doing a fellowship called Gandhi Fellowship in Nuh, and I want to know about the phrase commonly used "Majburi ka naam Mahatma Gandhi," because Gandhi has a remarkable work has he done, and I just wanted to understand what's the background behind this.
Basically, the point which I made with regard to Sarkari Gandhi, because Gandhi comes to us a very weak person, as if that he was actually a failure of everything. And that's why, Majburi Ka Naam Mahatma Gandhi becomes, and this is precisely what Jaya was asking when she said that she was actually refuting the point which I made, that, there is a reason to be slow. Obviously the court cases will take time. It does not mean that we should wait for the court cases. There is world outside court, and that world require different kind of engagement. So if you still stick to the legal process and feel, by the way, Gandhi was very critical of the legal process. For Gandhi, lawyers are the lawyers, doctor, and railway. These are the three things which actually destroyed India. And obviously, if you look at lawyers, and especially the legal system in our country, Janvi is absolutely right, that if you look at the legal system, and Gandhian technique should not be applied on making sense of the legal system which we have. Gandhi was saying something wider. So we have to get rid of the legal framework and get out and make it a social issue. So Majburi Ka Naam Mahatma Gandhi is also a legal interpretation of Gandhi in that sense.
So Janvi, do you want to complete what you were saying?
No, I think I have answered.
Okay,
I understood
no,
what she was saying.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I'll go to Rishikanta. Rishikanta, if you can just introduce yourself and ask the question, because we lost Jaya. So.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rishi. I'm from Imphal, Manipur. And so it was very interesting to learn how you expand about the dialogue, because like I'm facing on it, because we are very proactively engaging to bring uh, back to the two community which is fighting uh, uh, the last 16 months. Uh, yeah, we are. I also believe that okay, when we talk about the dialogue, as you said, the institutional engagement was failed because the government proposed for this committee, but it was failed. And we also trying to build the small actors to bridge from people to people, to connect to people, because at the end of the day, like there's some what you call the uh, uh, those people who are called the CSOs who are taking the lead role, they might be agreed on the table. All the political parties might be agreed on the table. The government will be agreed on the table. But at the end of the day, that calculation would be very slow. And that could not be done by the CSOs in the government. So we are focusing on how to bridge from people to people, woman to woman, because we believe that the women are the very great role in this making. Unfortunately, in Manipur, the women is also divided. I also think that yes, candle mass is also its own impact. When we talk about the public opinion, mobilizing the public opinions, we might not be able to reach each and every individual to mobilize to make the awareness. But activities, that particular solidarity activities can be the medium of showing the solidarity and getting the solidarity from the people through media or whatever. So it has own importance also, which I consider. And it's very interesting that your critical analysis of the Gandhi's way of looking things. And I'm very interesting when you talk about that if we are stuck in the court, so we should come out from the court. And we can, pressurize to the judiciary also. We can speed up this. So if you are on the road in a democratic way, because like the public opinion will be created, and the pressure will be come to the government and then judiciary also. So I think that it is not the one way; it is a multiple way, and the collectiveness might not become one time, but it will become from the. It's like the small islands. We have to, uh, network it was to make it in one platform. This is what I feel. Thank you, Chef.
Thank you very much. This is an excellent comment. So I don't have to add to anything because you have said what also feel, especially about Manipur, because there is a need to have a dialogue, and I completely agree with you.
Thank you, Rishi. Jaya, you're back. So if you can just put on your camera and introduce yourself and ask your question or share your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Uh, my name is Jaya, and I am a theatre artist, and I also work in the space of leadership. Mine was more like a comment because I feel a lot something that Gandhian methods and Gandhian political philosophy also uh, points to is deep introspection and reflection on words. So when words like punishment gets equated with justice, which is a much larger term, social, economic justice, and the ethics of it gets equated to punishment, and it becomes event based, then we miss out on the larger picture. And probably all of Gandhian method is about uh, looking at uh, the causal factors, uh, social, economic, as well as uh, personal factors, and and mine is like that's probably why Gandhi remains relevant internationally, globally, in a timeless kind of a way, and also how ecologists and a lot of other people, so or those working in circular economy and things like that, find relevance in Gandhi and or reinterpretation of Gandhi even today. How do you look at that? Because it's not only about conflicts within communities or with the state, but in a context, even in a global context of climate change and such issues.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's a very good comment. I obviously I would completely agree with you. But when it comes to climate change, I think one point which struck me always, and which is actually very problematic way of which is one of the central theme of the environment movement in the world today, is that it always, it has not yet made environment something which is a concern of an individual. It is always seen as if that is very it is distance thing. So how would I do this? And in that context, Gandhi would become very relevant. And I'll give you one very interesting example from my own city, Delhi. Obviously, in the next month, in November and December, early December, that would be smoke, and smoke is going to affect all of us. And there is one solution to that was odd and even. If you have an odd number of car, you will not be allowed to run your car on road on certain days. And to my surprise, very educated people actually try to break that. They very educated, even politicians of some political party actually opposed it. I could not, and especially on say for instance, our one of the great festival, Diwali. I could not understand that if I burn a cracker, then it will affect me. So this relationship of individual with environment is very important, and I think I completely agree with you that Gandhian Satyagraha, environment Satyagraha, is something which is very significant for all of us at the moment.
Thank you. Solomon, you can go.
Good evening, sir. An earlier speaker was saying that it will be impossible to use Gandhian methods to dialogue with those who may not have really conscience, especially those maybe using the fascist method. An immediate example that comes to my mind is the complete demolition of the ashram, Gandhian ashram in Varanasi, and subsequent satyagraha undertaken by the inmates and those who are Gandhians were there. In this climate, in this environment, would it take long time, or would we really let us be consistent that one day that they will come to the table to dialogue? Or will it remain as a moral force, which if the other party is accepting, yes, otherwise no. Otherwise, at least in the eyes of the world, it will remain as a failure. It's always a very question. One more, just a comment, or I don't know, how do we resolve sort of a contradiction that on the one hand, that satyagraha is ultimately used for the social purpose. On the other hand, Gandhi says, no, actually it is for me. I mean, where do you see the linking point? How do I see that? Okay, it is personally for my own personal realization. Okay, I can become a Buddha maybe in and through that, but Ultimately, it is for the social purpose. How do we link that? How do we resolve these contradictions? I think these two.
Simple. It's very simple. I'll answer the second question first. It's very simple. When we situate an individual, myself, when I situate myself in the larger social world, I would become a part of that. So I'm doing it for the sake of it, for the sake of the social good. I'm not expecting the society will change one day. I will experiment that on myself, and I'm doing it for purifying myself as a member of that community, as a member of that entity, which is a collective entity. So, Gandhi does not see any contradiction between one's own self and the society in which he or she lives. So, therefore, there is no contradiction in that. And he also said that, Satyagraha can be started. For example, I disagree with you, so, what is my disagreement? I can start a satyagraha against you, but I have to be very clear that this disagreement, what is the logic of this disagreement? If this disagreement is personal, then it would be very selfish for me to start a satyagraha against you. But if it has got something in relation to you, I think it would be very important for me to do that. I don't expect you to change. Remember, Gandhi won't expect you to change. He would actually, this is part and parcel of his own commitment building. So there is no contradiction between these two. The second point is actually related to this. Suppose the other party does not want to come. So for Gandhi, I think what is important is the faith in the process of dialogue. How should I, obviously, then it will become completely demoralized. We will become completely demoralized that if the other party is not engaging us, then it means it's a failure. No, Gandhi would say it's not going to be a failure. I am doing it for my own. And Gandhi would say, obviously, things are made and remade and destroyed because, and that's why public opinion is important, because we do not create or we do not look at the wider picture. This example of Gandhian ashram destroyed, or in Wardha they are actually commercializing the entire thing, or making Gandhian ashram like a very commercial entity. So I think it is very important for us to make aware of the people who, to realize that what is the significance of this. Obviously, if we are saying that Gandhian idea is so static, and I think we are mistaken. If, as I said in my talk, that if Money Heist, which is a Spanish series, they are going to use Gandhi after 76 or 78 years of his death, and realizing that he has got something very fascinating to say, I think Gandhi is going to survive. And this is what is also important for us to realize. For me, as I said, that I do not want to be a Gandhian. I am not. Gandhi is a resource. Gandhi is a significant resource for me to make my commitment strong, to survive in a world which is full of contradictions, to make myself happy, and to think of a better future. Remember, what is the problem of protest movement these days? They do not have any futuristic imagination. Why? Because after the collapse of USSR, communists became liberals. All the communists all over the world, they became liberal because they did not have any futuristic point of reference to mention that this can be done. As a result, on the other hand, so there are four things which we must remember. One is political party, second is movement, third is protest, and fourth is campaign. So we have to establish a link between these two. Political parties have become professional to fight election and win election and make government. Movement have completely, they do not have any futuristic imagination, and that's why they are facing tremendous, they are declining. All the movement throughout the world of different kind. Third is agitation. You have issue based thing and you agitate, which is issue based. Remember, all these things are issue based. It has nothing to do any wider spectrum. And fourth is a campaign. You campaign for something. So it means that the wider social transformation which Gandhi and his generation thought of at one point of time is reduced to an issue-based agitation. I think that is the problem. No one has stopped us to make crucial linkages at the wider level of things, wider schemes of things, and try to make sense of the future. So Gandhi, Gandhian future, Gandhi won't give us any blueprint, or for that matter, Ambedkar won't give us any blueprint to achieve something which is very different from their own context. They are our resources, and we have to think our future by ourselves. We should not, reduce everything to Gandhi, Ambedkar, Bhagat Singh, etc., or for that matter, Karl Marx. I think they have played their innings. This is our world, and in which we have to find our own answers.
Thank you. Jenny?
I think
Yeah, go ahead, please, Dr. Ahmed.
Yeah, I think I have to go.
Okay.
Because I did not realize. Yeah, but if you have, if we can take two more questions. Yeah.
I think we have of people who have not spoken: Shiva, Zishana, Shabrish, and Jalil. If any of you would like to maybe unmute yourself and switch on your cameras and just ask a question. So yeah, I think, or anybody else who's in the crowd who can just basically has any more questions, feel free. Okay, so I think Dr. Ahmed, this was a lovely session. I have personally done my post-graduation in Gandhi and Peace Studies. So a lot of what you said resonated with me in terms of, Gandhi. I mean, in the 21st century, how does he fit, and whether he is relevant, and like you said, even if it's not never for the outside. It is for the internal purification. So yes, and when your topic came, my initial part was that, oh, this sounds so similar to how we heard recently, a gentleman in the government say that India has too much democracy. So sometimes, we also have this thing that we have too much dialogue. Like I work a lot with India, Pakistan, citizen to citizen peace. And we keep hearing this, what is this Aman Ka Tamasha? What is this Mombatti, wala thing? So we keep hearing. But I think at times it is not even, for us, it's not even that, personally for me, it's not even that, I'm out, I'm hoping something would change. Like India and Pakistan are so hopeless. Personally, I don't see, but I think it's very important for me to maybe stand for the right thing and say that, if I know I'm not answerable to anybody else, but to my own self, that, I was there, I was standing for the right. And I think, and if there's anybody else who is maybe scared to stand for the right or speak the right thing, maybe they can just have solace that, oh, there's somebody, even if I'm not today ready, maybe tomorrow I will be or not be, but at least there is another echo of my voice. So a lot of what you said resonated, and I'm so grateful to have you here. And as usual, a pleasure. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.